Welcome to the Breakthrough Success Podcast, helping you achieve that breakthrough you've always been looking for in your business. And now your host, Mark Guberti.
Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Mark Guberti, and this is the podcast for marketers and small business owners who are looking for the breakthrough for their businesses. I am very excited about this show. We are going to talk about igniting your motivation to make productivity a breeze with our guest, Trevor Oldham. Trevor had the itch for entrepreneurship ever since he was a child with a lemonade stand. Since then, his love for entrepreneurship exponentially grew, and he now has the goal for every small business in America to use his services. He is a public speaker whose wish is to inspire others to become the lion that is inside of each and every one of us. And now it is my pleasure to welcome Trevor to the show.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for the intro. I loved it. I'm super excited to speak with your audience today.
I'm really excited to have you share all of your insights. And before we go deep into that, I like to get an idea of the individual I'm interviewing. So this is sometimes I call it the why question. So for you, when did you first discover your itch for entrepreneurship?
So I've always been an entrepreneur. I didn't know that it was ever called entrepreneurship until I got older. But like you mentioned, when you were giving my introduction, I started a lemonade stand when I was younger, and I went door to door selling lemonade. I used to buy and sell baseball cards. I used to buy and resell Ed Hardy clothing, which was a popular brand a few years ago. I even went and mowed people's lawns. So for me, it was always, I don't know what it is about myself, but I just always hated working for someone else. And that was ever since I've been a young person, really young, like 5, 6 years old. I never wanted to work for anyone else. So that was, a little bit of a start. And as I got older, I ended up having to work a job, and I worked the job for 6 months at a local retail store, and I got a 9-cent raise. So that just further told me that, all right, I can't be working for anyone and wanting to be making the desirable income or even the impact that I had. It was essentially just a dead-end job that, any teenager can typically get. So from that, I ended up watching the movie The Wolf of Wall Street, which I'm sure a lot of people in your audience have watched. I thought it was amazing, just the lifestyle that Jordan Belfort had. And that was like my first taste of saying, wait a second, like this is how someone maybe in the upper class would live. And with having that in the upper class, what that did is it showed me and opened my eyes to an entirely new world. And I went out and I bought books on investing. And when I bought these books on investing, I realized that it's going to take a while for me, to make money in investing because you need time and you need money. I had the time, but I didn't have the money. So then I ended up buying a book. It was the differences between the middle and upper class. They mentioned to start a business. So I went out and I ended up buying books on different ways and to start a business. And one of them mentioned Alibaba. And for those of you who don't know what Alibaba is Alibaba it's a Chinese, essentially wholesale company. And what you can do with the Chinese wholesalers is you can buy products really cheap. So I bought phone cases, and then with the phone cases, I resold them, come to find out that they're knockoffs. So I had to eat the cost. I still have them to this day. So I went back and I said, all right, I know that, I can buy products, wholesale them from China, resell them. So then I started another company called Trevor James Products. It was a bracelet and watch company. I'm from Cape Cod, so they were nautical themed. So that really got me more into entrepreneurship. And then from there, I saw that a lot of kids aren't into entrepreneurship, so I wanted to be that motivation. So then that was the idea behind the company that I'm currently working with. I no longer do Trevor James Products. It just got to the point where it was a lot of work doing Trevor James Products and Become a Lion. I don't know how Jack Dorsey does it with Square and Twitter, but for me, I just wanted to pick one and go all in. So then I just picked Become a Lion, and that's just what I'm doing right now.
Trevor, that is a really awesome story. And I love the fact that you're starting young like me. I always love to interact with other people who they started young and they really took the time to follow up on their dreams. But one thing I see is I feel like a lot of people want to be entrepreneurs in a sense where they have their own business, they're pursuing their own dream. But even though they have this desire, you don't really see a lot of people following up on it, especially at a young age. So how did you follow up on the goal to become a successful entrepreneur?
For me, it was honestly, I think it had to come from my father. And the reason I say that is because before I come to the line, it was big as it is. I still had the company, like I mentioned, Trevor James Products, and I was wholesaling bracelets and watches. And that was like the first taste I got in entrepreneurship, building a brand on Instagram and interacting with others. I must have gone like 6 months, 7 months in, and I was maybe selling 5-10 bracelets a month. And I told my dad, I was like, hey dad, like, I don't think this business thing is for me. I want to quit. And he's like, no, like, you just got to keep going. You just got to push through it. He's like, you're learning a lot. And he like allowed me to see the bigger picture. So from there, it's like, all right, I'll just continue on. So then I think, I'm not kidding, like maybe a month or two later, I sold over like 100 bracelets in a month. And then I ended up being like 150 bracelets in a month. So then it really showed to myself, like one, that I can do it. And two, that if I work long enough, that I'll be able to achieve the desired success that I want. So I just really have just used that as a motivation to say, all right, if you're starting a company and it might not, you're just a beginner, and that's hard being a beginner because you see all these different successful people. And there's even people who I see right now way above me. I'm like, how did I get there? We just have to realize that you just lay the foundation brick by brick. So you can't expect to go out and start a successful company in 6 months or a year and be able to make a full-time living. So people just have to understand that if they're going to be going into entrepreneurship, they're going to have to be giving up their weekends. They're going to have to be giving up spending time with their friends, because it's really hard building a business, especially if you're building a business while you have another job. And so you just have to use your time the most efficiently that you can, but it is entirely possible to build a business and to become a successful entrepreneur. And I always tell people, there's always been someone who is in your situation where you are today that has become more successful. And then you always know that there's people who have been worse off than you have also become successful. So if they can become successful, why can't you do it?
I absolutely love that question. I feel like it's one of those questions we need to be asking ourselves more often. And you mentioned how entrepreneurs have to make these sacrifices. You can't go out with friends on the weekends. You could barely you still have a social life and stuff, but it's harder to do that as an entrepreneur versus not being an entrepreneur. And I mean, we know the sacrifices, we know the passion behind our ideas. So with all of this, what motivated you to pursue entrepreneurship at a young age?
What really motivated me happened to be, first off, I was in it initially just for the money. I was like, I can't be making $8.09 an hour and expect to, be able to do the stuff that I want to do. So for me, I was like, all right, I want to make more money. And then I realized, like, wait a second, especially with Trevor James Products, I could, I would wake up in the morning, I would have $100 order. And that was essentially what I would make in 1 week working, 12 hours. So then I finally started to realize, like, I can leverage it better and make more money. But then that was Trevor James Products. And then with Become the Lion, yes, we still want to make money because we have to live. But it's also been trying to make an impact on others, because for myself, I was never really told through going through school that I should become an entrepreneur. I was all set on graduating college, going to work in a cubicle, and working my way up the corporate ladder.
Exactly.
And then I just started to realize there's a little bit of a different avenue that I can take with entrepreneurship. So, and then once I started, it's hard in the beginning because you don't have a following or anything. But then it was they'll be I'll get messages every now and then where people say, hey, thank you so much for your brand and what you're doing. And then you start to realize, wait a second, I'm making an impact on the world. I'm not going to be one of those people who, they pass away when they're 70 years old and they look back and they have never made an impact on life. I'm starting to realize that, when you make an impact on others, you're literally changing how that person lives. And that's just what really motivates me.
I really love that motivation in which you're thinking about having an impact on the world, leaving your mark. And I absolutely love that motivation. But not only is the motivation towards why you do things important, but also the motivation that you have towards accomplishing your goals is important. And I feel like part of that can be fueled by your overall motivation to be in business, your overall, why are you doing this? But what motivates you specifically to pursue bigger goals?
What motivates me specifically is just getting through the limiting beliefs that I have on myself. And I can think back to a long, all my life, all these different limiting beliefs that I put on myself that I think, I've heard other people do. And I'll give you an example is I did track in high school and I was a sprinter. I always told myself that I would never be able to run long distance. And that was just a limiting belief that I put on myself. And then last year I was able to run 10 miles without stopping. And then another limiting belief that even before starting businesses, I had an idea that I wanted to write a fiction book. So I sat down and I actually wrote a fiction book, which I'm in the works of trying to self-publish myself, but it's over 70,000 words. So it was just limiting beliefs that I put on myself. And then there was a limiting belief where I have with Become a Lion saying, oh, I'll never make this much revenue in 1 month, or I'll never be able to get this many downloads for the podcast. And I'm just always just trying to push through the limiting beliefs that I have. And it's essentially just setting higher goals for myself and just seeing what I can do and how I can reach my full potential as a person.
I absolutely love the idea of tackling goals that they don't seem possible in the beginning, but then you conquer that limiting belief and all of a sudden you realize it was a lot easier. I mean, in my experience, I had a goal to get 100,000 Twitter followers in 5 years. I believe we are still at the point within my 5-year stretch where I'm supposed to be still heading towards 100,000 followers. So if you set a big goal for yourself and you pursue it, you'll realize that it's a lot easier than you really thought.
Mm-hmm. I know there's another thing where if you set big goals for yourself, even if you don't hit them, you're still going to be a lot better off than where you are than if you set little goals and achieve them. And I can give you an example of when I ran track is I was in one of the meets that I had, I ran the 100 meter, which is essentially just the length of a football field. And I was racing the fastest kid in essentially the conference. And I'd beat other kids who I knew I was faster than them, but I knew this kid was faster than me. And yes, even though he did beat me in that race, I ran my fastest time that I ever ran. And that's because, he was better than me, but I just used that motivation to just push me to get in the zone to say, all right, I'm going to set this high goal of, either that's Twitter followers, whether that's revenue, whether that's impacting people, and I'm going to go all in with it. And even if I don't hit that, it's still better than someone who set a lower goal.
I absolutely love the track analogy because I do long distance myself. We could literally probably talk hours and hours about our track stories, but we won't do that. One thing that people do encounter is they're doing their work, they're really enjoying it, but I feel you could also hit those rough patches where you love what you do, but you're wondering when is the money going to come? And other things other factors combine, and all of a sudden you're at a cold streak where it's not you've completely lost your passion, but you're trying to get back into your optimal level. So how do you recommend we get out of those types of cold streaks?
Yeah, I love that you asked that because that happens to me every now and then. I went through one about a month ago where it was to the point where it was just hard to continue on with my routines and to continue to put in the work. What I've realized is that we sometimes can get in the same monotonous routine every single day, doing the same activities. That I notice that anytime I try to tackle a new project, I just get so excited. For example, that I'm working on creating a podcast course for Become a Lion that teaches people how to, create and launch their own podcast. And I never created an online course. So now it's an entirely new field of, I have to learn how to launch a course. I have to learn how to write the email scripts. I have to learn how to get affiliates for it. So it's now it's something I'm trying to learn something new. So I try to learn as much as I can and I get excited about it. So I think when someone gets stuck in a rut, they should stop for a second and just think about what they've been doing for the last week, for the last month, and just realize that you might be doing the same thing over and over, that you just need to switch it up. And that can be releasing something new for your company or just trying to go in a different direction for just something that gets you excited and that's going to allow you to be passionate about that project.
Trevor, thank you for offering that really great insight. I feel when I pursue new projects like this podcast, when I was working on it, it was a new project at the time. And I just feel it could really expand your knowledge in the area while at the same time increasing your productivity and getting you out of any possible cold streak.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing about entrepreneurship that I see is really important is learning. And I feel like it's very important for the motivation side as well. And I'm wondering if you could share with us how you make the time to learn each day and how much time you spend learning about things within your niche.
Yeah, for sure. So I always, you might have seen the stat line where it says the average CEO reads 60 books a year and the average minimum wage worker reads 1 book a year. So just from that quote alone, you should know that you should be either, whether it's, reading books or listening to books on Audible. So I'm a big proponent on reading books. So what I do is, as part of my morning routine, when I get up in the morning, I usually try to read for an hour between 6 a.m. and then 7 a.m. And then also when I'm in the gym working out or even driving. So usually when I'm driving or working out, I'll either listen to Audible or I'll listen to a podcast. Sometimes I just like to switch it up because sometimes Audible, gets tiresome, and same thing with podcasts. So I'm always switching it up. But then for my niche is I just spend the majority of my time researching. So example, as I'll go back to our podcast course that I'm releasing, I've never, released a product. So right now I'm creating a webinar for the course to help promote it and to sell the course. So I'll spend essentially like a week or two just reading so many different blogs posts, taking online courses on how to build a webinar, and just planning exactly how I want to do it, just learning as much as I can. So I'm really not putting out any new content or anything. I just got my head down, learning. And then essentially what I'll do is I'll go out and I'll then create the webinar. And I'll use exactly what I learned from my previous 2 weeks. And then once the webinar is done, it's like, all right, I got a new project to tackle, which, whatever that might be in the future, then I'll spend a week or two just learning as much as I can about it and then implementing it. And then that's all I continue to do. So I like to spend the majority of my time just learning as much as I can and just trying to implement that. And, nothing's ever going to be completely perfect. But if I can take the time to just learn a new skill that's going to be, beneficial to our audience, it's going to be beneficial to myself. So I highly recommend someone, if you don't have a lot of time to be, learning as much as you would like, you can try to just find time, even 5 minutes during the day, of listening to an Audible, or when you get up in the morning, you can listen to it when, you're in the shower. There's just so many different ways in which you can just learn, especially in today's day and age with, the majority of us have smartphones. So we have YouTube, we can listen to, watch videos on there. So like I say, anytime you have free time, you should always try to spend that learning.
I really love the importance of learning, and I definitely read at least an hour every day as well. Working out, same thing. I don't do it in the car, but basically everything else you said is something to the effect of how I learn. And a little side note to anyone interested about the webinars, I know you're looking in that area. Episode 39 is an episode that, as of this recording, we just published, where John Schumacher talks about how to create a massive revenue by hosting webinars. So I thought that would be a good plug for anyone interested in webinars.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to check that out.
I knew you were interested in that, so I just thought I'd like to share it. I'm happy that you're interested in checking it out, and for Breakthrough Success listeners as well. But you're 20, I'm 19, and I feel like every time an entrepreneur, especially young entrepreneurs, they're on the verge of success, they face a lot of critics. So how do you get past the criticism and continue to charge forward?
Yeah, I like that you asked that question, because it's not one of those things when you expect, when you're starting a business or anything, just trying to make better for the world, or trying to go off and do something that's really cool. People just don't like that, and I'm not sure exactly why that is, but in the beginning it was hard for me to handle criticism and people saying mean things, essentially saying like really mean things, because you're putting yourself out there on the online world. And it was hard for me in the beginning, like, why do these people think this stuff about me? But then I really realized that, all right, I'm going to step back for a second. Now, who is criticizing me? And then I stopped, and I'm like, all right, this is someone who, was listening to my podcast, or this is someone who read my article. So now they're on my company, and then they're telling me, this is terrible. Well, at least I put it out, and then I think to myself, what has that person done that, that's so great that they can come criticize me or be, be mean to me. But then if it's someone who's above me, then obviously I'm going to listen to it. But when you think of people who below you, you have the trolls online. I had a really nasty review on our podcast that someone left a few weeks ago. And I'm just like, you know what? I just think it's a proponent of putting myself out there that people are going to criticize me. So no matter what I do, so I might as well just put myself out there. There's people that are going to like me. There's people that are going to hate me. I can't win. So let me just do what I continue to do, and I just try to shake it off now.
I absolutely love that message, because I feel like no matter criticism, in my opinion, is a good thing, because it means you're actually getting somewhere with what you're trying to do. And I definitely feel like it's a sign of good things instead of bad things. But I feel like criticism can sometimes get in the way of our dreams, where we're reluctant to dream bigger, because if you get especially the first time you're exposed to it, you're like, oh, great, what are people going to think about me? So how do you dream bigger without getting worried about your capabilities or what other people will think about you?
The reason, I think one of the things is, honestly, I've meditated for almost an entire year straight, and I think that it's like affected my central nervous system to the point where I really don't feel that stressed anymore. So it's really like when someone says something negative to me, I'm like, oh, all right, that's cool. And then I just try to move on. And I just realized that there's going to be people that say negative things about me while I'm at this level, and there's going to be people who say negative things about me at the next level. And I know Grant Cardone, he's big on, people who might be negative to you. And he just states that the more people you have criticizing you, the more successful that you're going to be. And there's a saying out there that goes, if you get 50% of the people to hate you in America, you can become the next president.
That I heard Grant Cardone say that in one of his audiobooks. I remember it because I just read it I listened to it a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and he's just, Grant can be, over the top on sales and everything, but, he gets his message out, and he just doesn't let any of the critics, really get him down. I think you got to think about for yourself, like I said, people are going to hate you. People are going to love you. And I think it was James Altucher that said somewhere along the lines, 50% of the people are going to hate you. 40% of the people aren't going to really care. And then that 10% of the people are going to love you and then help push your business forward.
I love that idea as well. I mean, yes, I do feel like a lot of people are going to criticize. And at the same time, it's not like everyone who comes across you is going to be that dedicated to spread your brand. So I feel like it's very important to reach out to as many people as possible.
Yeah, I think, when you reach out to as many people as you can, you just start to get a sense of exactly who everyone is, how you're going to help people, even what people think of you. I know for me, and I'm sure if some of your listeners are younger, when I first started Become the Lion, I had my friend, I actually bought a shirt with a quote on it. This is before the website or any of the social media was up. And I wore it in November, and my friends were like, oh, what's that? And I was like, oh, this is my new company. I have an idea. And they essentially just laughed at it. And then you start to think do I have something? There's something wrong with me. Why am I doing this? And I remember last year being in college as a freshman, and this was when I was starting my business. And I talked to all the other kids, and none of them had their own business. They all were content with working for others. And I thought it was strange for me to wanting to go off and to start my business. But until I really started the podcast, and I realized that there's tons of other entrepreneurs out there, that I really realized that, it's really cool to be doing what I'm doing. And it's kind of weird that people just accept the norm of just getting a job without thinking too much about it.
I definitely feel like there are people who they just go into the job and they don't really fully think about, oh, hey, I could be an entrepreneur too. So I'm happy you brought that up, but I would like to transition into a series of questions I like to ask all my guests. And it starts off with, what is one big challenge you faced in your life, and how did you overcome it?
One big challenge that I had to face in my life, and it's going to sound counterintuitive, but it was the fear. It was almost like the fear of success, and more along the lines of fear of making a lot of money. And I actually I've worked with a life coach to really help me get over this limiting belief. I think it was for me growing up and growing up in a middle class neighborhood where, not necessarily have all the money in the world, it's almost like I developed a subconscious belief that it was bad to have a lot of money. So what I did is I worked with my life purpose coach, and she really helped me get over this limiting belief. And what she did is I had an idea for an email to write out for an affiliate product. And I told her that, I almost felt bad for taking other people's money because then they would feel like I felt when I didn't have a lot of money. And she was like, you just got to write this email. So I typed it up. I made it like really emotional, really good on how good the product was because I was using it myself and I really liked it. And I sent out the email, and it didn't make thousands. It made a few $100s, but it was in that thing. I was like, that actually feels great because I'm helping these other people and they're helping me. So I was just trying to think of I turn to the thing where when I make money, now I can help others. I'm not taking away from people because people are paying me what they want. And then now I can donate that money to charities. I can help out my family. So now I just try to view money in a different mindset of how it's going to help other people.
Trevor, thank you for sharing your big challenge and how you ended up overcoming it. The next question I'd like to ask all people at this stage is, what is the best lesson that you have learned on your journey?
The best lesson I have learned on my journey has to be that no matter what happens to you, you can always come out the other end. And Steve Jobs has a quote where it goes something along the lines of, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. And I love just saying that quote to myself all the time because what I realize is that no matter how bad something happens in your life, if you look back at that event, maybe not while it happened, but if you look at it, back a month from now or 3-6 months, you'll probably see that something positive probably came out of that event. And there's just been so many different instances in my life in which something very negative has happened into my life. And then I look down a month later, I can see how that negative event actually turned into a positive event. So I just want people to realize that whenever something negative happens in your life, don't get too hung up on it. So say, all right, now I got to figure out how to turn this into a positive event. And I just think that's really helped me.
I love that message of looking at any negative and trying to shape it into a positive. I definitely feel like more people need to receive that message. And one question I also have is, since I'm an avid reader myself, and I know a lot of people here like listening to a podcast, I feel like you're the type of person who listens to a lot of audio and reads a lot of books. So what are 3 great books that you can think of right now?
The first book would have to be Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. I love everything about, what Steve Jobs did and how he changed the world. Maybe not how he was mean to people, but he's more demanding and, pushing them. But that was like the first book I really read that, gave me a huge insight of what it takes to become a successful entrepreneur. So that's the first one. And then another one is Outwitting the Devil, and that's by Napoleon Hill. And Napoleon Hill, I'm sure the entire audience knows that he wrote Think and Grow Rich.
Yep.
Essentially, in Outwitting the Devil, he realizes that he studied all these people, Carnegie, Morgan, Rockefeller for 20 years. And now he wrote Think and Grow Rich. But then he realizes that he never implemented the practices in his own life. So he starts to worry, like, what happens if these don't work on other people? Because he was almost just relating his experiences of what he learned from the people. So he starts himself off at scratch, and he literally implements his own practices from his own book into his life. And this shows you how Think and Grow Rich can actually affect anyone, especially himself. So that was a cool book. And then one I read recently, it's called Win or Learn by John Kavanagh. And John Kavanagh, he is Conor McGregor's UFC trainer. And the reason I like that book is, one, I'm a fan of Conor McGregor. I like his story. But in the book, the trainer, you realize, so he's over in Ireland, and he starts the gym literally out of a shed when he was like 20 years old. And his parents continue to tell him, like, hey, like, you should go and get a real job. I think he had like an engineering degree. But you just see, like, he started from a shed. And then he went off and he bought like 1,000 square foot gym, and then he made it bigger. And you can just see like how much, literally where he started making $100 a month from the gym and then being a bouncer at night. And it's just cool because he's not like an entrepreneur like a Tony Robbins or a Grant Cardone, but he's someone who became successful. But it gives you a little bit of an insight into the how he actually did it from just starting literally like in a shed and then becoming, Conor McGregor's trainer, now making millions of dollars. So I highly recommend those 3 books.
Trevor, thank you for sharing all of those great books. And before I get to the part where you get to promote yourself and I give you the spotlight, you're actually going to be the first guest I ask this question to. So what is one question that we need to be asking ourselves more often?
I think the one question, one word would be just the question, asking yourself why. And what I mean by just saying why are you doing what you're doing? Are you going to school because that's what you want to do? Or are you going to school because that's what your parents want to do? Are you starting a business because that's what you want to do? Or is that because what someone else wants to do? So I always want people to just ask themselves just through 3 words with a question mark, why?
Trevor, thank you for that great question. Sometimes simplicity is really the best way through. You definitely proved that with the why question. And for sharing all of your insights with us on Breakthrough Success. I'd love to give you the spotlight right now and let all Breakthrough Success listeners know where they can find Trevor on the web.
Yeah, for sure. So you can find our company, Become the Lion. That's just becomethelion.com. And then same with Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, Become the Lion. And then for me personally, you can find me on Facebook at Trevor Oldham. That's TREVOR and then OLDHAM. And then the same on Instagram, Trevor Oldham.
Trevor, thank you for taking the time to share your insights on Breakthrough Success. It was a pleasure having you as a guest.
Thank you so much, Mark. I thank you for allowing me to take the time today to speak with your audience.
Thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed that interview. Trevor left me really motivated and provided a lot of great insights within our episode, so I'm really happy that I was able to have him as a guest on Breakthrough Success. And the fact that Trevor's been able to do all this at a very young age, similar to myself, I love to look at other young entrepreneurs out there and just use them as inspiration so that I can continue to provide more valuable work. And I hope that you got the same message from this episode. So if you forgot to take notes, then don't worry. We've got you covered with the show notes. Visit markgilberti.com/E40 for those. You can ask your questions over there, which I'll be more than happy to answer. To never miss an episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on whatever player you are using. If you are a regular listener and haven't done so already, I would greatly appreciate it if you could give this podcast a review or a rating. 2 ways you could do this are through markgilberti.com/iTunes or markgilberti.com/Stitcher. That ends this episode. Don't forget, dream big, achieve greatness, and unlock your potential today. How does over 100 retweets per day sound to you? My free ebook, 27 Ways to Get More Retweets on Twitter, has you covered. I use the methods within this ebook to get over 10,000 retweets every single quarter. To learn more and get access to this free resource, visit markgilberti.com/retweet.
This podcast is a production done by Mark Gilberti. For more insights, head on over to markgilberti.com.